Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's 11 o'clock. It is your mobility magic session on Thursday this week. So welcome if you're joining us for the first time, if you're joining us for the multiple times you've joined us, if you've joined us every week, if you're a regular, nice to see you. Obviously this is an extra session this week, so it's awesome to be able to deliver on a Thursday for you. Hello to everyone who's joining us. If you are a regular or if you join us for the first time, say this week you will need, today you will need a lacrosse ball, a foam roller, probably a seat, something to sit on. We're going to do a little bit of feet, a little bit of ankle work. We're going to do kind of working all the way up the side of the body, each side. So we're going to work a little bit of everything all the way up for the next half an hour, and we're going to have a great mobility session. So just going to turn off the comments. Great to see everyone. If you are joining us, as I say, for the first time, or if you're joining us on the replay, so let me just turn off the comments. You'll need a lacrosse ball first, so let's just grab that. We're going to start the same way that we sometimes do, and that's with a little bit of footwork. Then we're going to work into the toes, so you need to have a seat as well. So start with the ball on the floor. Again, if you know the pattern, if you know the drill on this one, feel free to jump ahead if you need to, or spend more time or less time on the areas that you know are going to benefit you. So, small roll out of the feet. Just going to start to mobilize that tissue on the bottom of the foot, and we are going to start at the bottom of the big toe, so just under the knuckle. We are going to pin that tissue and lift those toes all the way up, and then we're going to pin those toes down and lift them all the way up, and we're going to repeat it. We're going to move across the foot. So the idea here is that we're just lifting the toes up, bringing them down, splaying them out wide, just trying to get that tissue to kind of open up and separate. So we're squeezing down, we're opening up, we're pushing down, we're opening up, we're separating those toes out, we're starting to drive those toes all the way out. Awesome. Toes down, toes up, move that foot out slightly. We're coming towards the heel now on the big toe side, and we're putting a little bit of pressure. If you're wondering how much pressure to put, it's about an 7 or 8 out of 10. And the idea here is that you gauge it yourself. So if you were thinking, oh, I've got to be in pain, I've got to be uncomfortable when I do this, you don't have to be. It's whatever you can tolerate, whatever you can feel. It's just a pressure. We're trying to get the tension out of the foot. So again, toes come up a little bit, toes come down. We're going to move across the back towards the other side, the little toe side. And if you find your work that's particularly tender, just spend a little bit more time on it. Okay? So again, just to review, actually I'll do it on the other foot so you can see. We're pinning the tissue down just under the big toe. You can start with a small roll if you want, just to kind of give you an idea of where you might be tight in that area. And the reason we like to start with the foot is because it's kind of where everything kind of connects across the whole body. So if you were to shotgun an approach, this would be a good way to start your session, because it can unlock other things you didn't know were tight in your body, and can often unlock calves, hamstrings, glutes, etc. So again, start at the base of the big toe, coming all the way up, coming all the way down. Might feel some snaps, crackles, pops in your toes, but that's okay. We're trying to splay those toes as wide as we can, and we're moving across towards the little toe. So you can go toe by toe, you can go knuckle by knuckle, you can go tissue by tissue, and we're just kind of working our way across. So I'm going to leave that there for now. Again, do a little bit of a check and see how your toes feel. We're going to take a seat, and the idea here is that we're actually going to do some work on toes. So hopefully not easily offended by feet. If you like feet, this might be for you. If not, I apologize. Very little I can do, and hopefully my feet look okay on camera. So idea here is we are going to put our fingers in between our toes. Okay, it can be very uncomfortable at first, so I would advise you just to kind of ease into it and just use the other hand to kind of help tease your fingers into position. So index finger between big toe and second toe, and we're going to start by rotating the toes. So we're doing some rotational work here. We're just starting to get that foot to kind of open up. There's hundreds of joints in the actual foot itself. So getting some rotation, some movement, and making sure that you can move it well is essential to actually unlocking the rest of the body. So some rotations. I'm just tractioning slightly away. So the idea here is I'm tractioning slightly forward and around. So I'm going forwards by pulling and squeezing my toes slightly, and I'm teasing it out, and I'm rotating slightly. So tease, 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 and out. And again, we're just starting to open that foot up to get some movement in it. So step one would be a little bit of traction, a little bit of teasing out, and a little bit of rotation. You can hold your heel to steady it, because what you'll notice is as you start to move the foot, it kind of, all the joints start to separate slightly and it becomes a lot easier to move. So pinning, I'm rotating, I'm going to twist now. So again, a little bit of traction, a little bit of twisting. So you're kind of like wringing a towel almost. And I'm going in the opposite direction with my heel. So I'm just kind of wringing out that towel, I'm tractioning away, I'm getting that ankle to kind of stay stable on my knee whilst I open that foot up. So as you start to do it, as you start to traction a little bit, you may even find that suddenly you get all this great range of motion that kind of open up in that foot. So next thing you want to do is you want to splay the toes a little bit. This is where it can get a little bit uncomfortable with some people, just take time. So splaying the fingers nice and wide to separate the toes. You're now going to squeeze your fingers as hard as you can with the toes. So you're going to spread them and then squeeze. And this is where it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but once you get through that initial discomfort, it should feel a lot better. So I've squeezed for about 3 seconds. I'm going to push my toes out nice and wide, help splay them. I'm going to squeeze my fingers really, really hard. Squeeze, 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 squeeze with all my toes. I'm going to relax it. I'm going to squeeze, 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 squeeze all my toes. I'm going to relax. I'm going to do that one more time. So squeeze, 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 and relax. Awesome. So toes come up, toes come down. Just going to add a little bit more movement there. See how that feels? I'm going to switch to the other side. So there's a few more things you can do with that to kind of help mobilize the foot. But again, you want to make sure that you are pinning this ankle onto the knee. You are gripping the heel to kind of stabilize that, and you can also move it in opposite directions, because again, we're kind of wringing out that towel, right? And you also want to make sure that you are tractioning the toes away if you can, because that's going to help open up the joints a little bit, because if they get compressed in a shoe, best thing to do is add some traction, and that will kind of help open up the toes. Now, it's not like yanking your toes off, but it will help just create a little bit of space in between each joint, but sometimes that 1% difference compounds over time, and that's really what you're going to get with the stretches. So again, I'm tractioning my toes away slightly, and I'm twisting my foot, and I want to imagine that I'm turning my foot the opposite direction to the way that I'm twisting my heel. So I'm not moving from the ankle, I'm actually twisting the heel. So you imagine that there's 3 separate parts here. My ankle is, or medial malleola is kind of pinned against my knee. My, lateral malleola is pinned against my knee. My heel is in my hand and I'm twisting, and I'm creating this torsion just to kind of open up. So again, traction away, slightly round the corner, and I'm now starting to twist a little bit more. So again, 7 or 8 out of 10, a little bit of torsion there, a little bit of a twist, a little bit of a twist, a little bit of turn, twist, turn, twist, down and up. And now let's add that spread of the toes. So now I'm widening my fingers, trying to get my little toe away from my big toe, trying to get some space in between each one. If you need to pull your fingers down slightly, that can also work. So just working your toes down towards the actual base in between the toe can also add enough to spread it. So you can always just push the toes fingers down. And now we're squeezing the fingers. So really, really squeeze those fingers. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. And as you do that, contraction a little bit if you want. Traction a little bit. And again, the idea is we're creating some movement in between all those hundreds of joints in the foot, where all those small bones connect. Because there's so many joints and bones in the foot, because it's very similar, obviously, to your hand. That's worthwhile having good mobility in the toes and the foot as well. You can and take away a lot of tension. Okay, awesome. So now let's hop back up. Let's see how the foot feels. So imagine you're just trying to grip the ground. See if that's improved. See if your arch has improved too. That's always worth checking. I didn't check before, but it's also worth thinking about as well. So when you do this, if you're doing it on replay, just think about doing a check with your arches beforehand. Also worth seeing if your toes feel a little bit more splayed out as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some direct downward pressure on the big toe. So the idea here is if we can get some big toe mobility, that unlocks a lot with the foot. Can also help with any knee pain as well. So we're going to imagine that we're going to push down the toe. Now if you have any history of a broken toe, you might have the range for this. I definitely do on both toes, so I'm going to ease into it, and you may find that this kind of opens straight up for you, but you can also still gain range if you have any injuries as well. So gentle pressure, about a 6 or a 10. Most of my weight is on this side. I'm just easing into that mobility on that big toe, and I'm just starting to gain some range as I add light pressure. A little bit of a stretch to kind of open up the front of that foot. And now I'm going to do the same with the rest of the toes. So again, big toe and then rest of the toes. If you already have the range, you got ballerina feet, and you have that flexibility or that hardened kind of position, and you can get that mobility straight away, go for it. Okay. So again, start with the big toe. Smaller toes are going to be forward and front. Weight's going to be mostly on this leg, so I don't add any more injuries to my list. And I'm just lightly pressing down to gain that range. So idea here again, just gaining enough range. Think about this 1%. You don't have to gain all the range today, but progressively over time it compounds, so you get that full effect of working on it on a regular basis. Frequency trumps intensity. Okay, so I'm pushing my toes down just a little bit, my little toes now, working into that foot. And if you feel it move all the way up your shin, from your ankle as well, that can also be beneficial. Okay, so now we're going to work on the side of our foot. So what I want you to do is lean your hip out slightly. We're turning our foot outwards, and we should feel a stretch that moves up our shin this way. So one way you can add a little bit of extra stretch to this. So there's kind of two levels. You can be in line, and you can kind of lean your hip out, and you'll feel a stretch through the side as well into that TFL glute med as we move through the stretch. You'll also feel a little bit of stretch in the hip down to the knee, and you'll also feel it into that peroneal fibularis area. So just going to push that hip away. We've got our foot turned. I'm sure you can see that. My ankle down, and if you have enough stability, if you haven't rolled your ankle recently, I would say if you have a history of rolling your ankle, you may just want to be really careful. You may want to do this seated. If you haven't, and you want to add a little bit of stretching, you need to open up this hip area, even into this lateral kind of aspect of our lat and our serratus anterior. Just going to move that hip away. Now let's move on to the other side. So gentle stretch, could get really intense. There's a lot of nerves in that area too. So again, step one would be in line, so you can balance the weight. Step two would be bring your foot out a little bit further, and then we can add some dynamic movement. So on this foot, I'm actually going to bring it slightly forward, so I have a little bit more of an intense stretch. It allows me to kind of lean back a little bit more into this foot, and it also moves the stretch up slightly into my side. So again, making sure that we're feeling a stretch on the foot first, into that side, into the fibularis, kind of peroneals area, moving all the way up into the hip. And then once you kind of get that and that feeling, that stretch, you're going to add in that slight lean and that slight turn, so it moves into your low back and then all the way up to the serratus. Now if you want to do a kind of a reach over the top, that also works too. If you want extra stability, you can also do this stretch with your body against the wall, and that will also work too. So if you're struggling to kind of stay balanced, you can modify it slightly by pushing your hip against the wall. That also works absolutely great. So I'll give you an example. I'm just going to press my hip against the wall, pushing my foot down, starting to lean. As I open my body up and I want more of a stretch to move into my side, I can then push my hip into the wall more, lean my weight slightly over my foot, so I get a stretch into that foot at the same time, and I'm just twisting slightly to get into that kind of low back area. So what you'll find is so far we've worked from the base of the foot, we've moved up the side of the shin into the calf, sorry, and into the side where it's the peroneals and the kind of fibularis area. It's interchangeable, and then we're going to work into this hip, this kind of TFL glute med region. So you're going to grab your foam roller first, and we're going to work into this TFL area. Now, unfortunately, this tension that you feel through your right T-band, we can't really do much about that unless we release the TFL and the glute med. So we're going to work on that now, okay? And we'll come back to the lacrosse ball in a minute. Mine's just going to keep wandering around, so I'm just going to leave it. And we're going to use the foam roller, okay? So first thing you want to do is lay slightly on your side. We're aiming for this little bit of meat on the side of the hip here, so around this area. So it's kind of about the area of your pocket on your shorts or pants if you're wearing any. Around that area is where we're going to hit. So we actually want to turn our body slightly with our leg kind of underneath us. We're going to use a shift of our arm and the hip above to gauge the pressure on the stretch. It's not greatly intense, but we can modify it to be a little bit more intense by adding a little bit of weight. So you're going to rest your body down slightly over the top. The beauty of this stretch is by putting pressure on this side, we're also getting a lateral stretch on this side. So you may also feel the stretch move through. So it's a compression, kind of soft tissue release on this side with the foam roller, and it's a lateral compartmental stretch on the other side into the low back on the other side. So important thing to start with is to rest your body down, let yourself relax, let that passive stretch take hold first. And if you're feeling any kind of slight discomfort in the low back, if it feels painful at all, just stop. Okay, so now we can add a little bit of a stretch. So we're just going to put our hand behind our head, and we're just going to use it as a rudder, kind of opening up, reaching across, and then we're going to return back to center. So again, just use your body weight with this particular stretch. We can make it more intense later, but for now, we are compressing the TFL on this side, of which we can reach the leg away from us to add a little bit of stretch as well. We can also extend our arm, our bottom arm away from us too. The top is getting a passive stretch because of this hip position being raised out of alignment and the lateral stretch moving down the leg. So let's change sides now. We're moving to the other side. Just be aware that if you have a history of low back compression, that sometimes this one initially can feel uncomfortable and can even add a little bit more compression, but just give it a chance, just breathe and let your body weight do the work. So essential for this one is just a breath, okay? Laying on our hip, bring our body down to the floor. We're just gonna balance across. We're gonna let that back leg hang, and you're just gonna find a position where you feel a little bit of a stretch back here, but our main focus is on the bottom here. So we're gonna either bridge up or stretch our hand out to let our body kind of hang down, and just find a position which works, where you feel that compression on this side of your hip. Again, it's around the area of your pocket. So the idea of being is that we're having a passive stretch on the top, we're having an active compression underneath, and we're just kind of opening up that hip. Awesome. So now you can add a little bit of a turn if you want to. You can stretch that bottom leg out. You can move that top leg to get a little bit more passive stretch here. But the idea is you're taking nice deep breaths and you're letting your body do the work. So now you've got that nice low back into the hip. We're going to change, and there's two options here. So we're moving into that glute med stretch. So we move from that round the corner a little bit. We're still hitting a little bit of lateral musculature. We're hitting that glute med. So you can either use a foam roller, or if you are like me and you can go a little bit more hardcore, you can use the lacrosse ball. Idea here is we're just releasing slightly. So you can see, because this is orange, I'm going to do it with the foam roller for now. We're just going to rest our butt on top of the foam roller, and we're trying to get a position where we feel a little bit of pressure on the glute. So best way to modulate this is to bring your leg backwards and forwards. Again, I'm just on the corner of the foam roller, with the idea being that I can move my hips to find the sweet spot. Now, once you feel a very, very, very uncomfortable kind of pressure in your glute, you're in the right spot. So this one, unfortunately, nothing you can do, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. If you're doing it right, if you're hitting the right spot, this can be very effective and can really release that lateral aspect of your hip all the way down to the knee, as these are kind of lateral stabilized glute med and TFL. So we've kind of worked through both, and it also will help release a little bit of low back as well. So just going to sit there. It can take up to 2 or 3 minutes to get this to loosen up. It will get slightly more intense before it gets better. And just so you don't watch a middle-aged guy sitting on a foam roller for 5 minutes towards the end of the session, I'm going to move onto the other side. So you can, again, move the leg slightly to modulate. You can lift up and down to stretch if that feels better. You can even open up your hip slightly this way to add some pressure downwards, and often what that will do is help to open up the inside of your hip as well. So from this angle, we're just opening up slightly, putting pressure downwards, and that can feel quite intense. So let's move over to the other side. Again, I would probably spend a lot longer, or if you feel comfortable using a lacrosse ball, that can be really effective. You can just sit on top of a seat or a surface. That works great. Okay, so going to do the same thing. We're just finding that sweet spot, that area that's extra intense on this one side, and we're just kind of finding where that works. Now, it might be different to the other side, because if you have a dominant side, if you have a hip that's slightly rotated like most people do, then this might be intense. So about there. So I'm working down more towards the where the hamstring meets the glute, and that's kind of where I can really feel a bit of intensity. Now, it's not going to be kind of that low if you're working the glute med. It'll be a little bit more lateral, but that's just kind of giving you some more direction as to where to hit. So should be on this underside right here. We can modulate the stretch by opening up our hips slightly if you want to hit a little bit more lateral edge. We can bring our leg up and down if we want to, and we can kind of rotate as well. That really works nicely to kind of help initially loosen this up, but again, the idea is we're getting that trigger point out. So just resting in that area where it gets extra intense, and just breathing and just staring into space while you do it. Go to your happy place. And you can, once it starts to ease off, you'll just suddenly feel a massive release of that muscle. It will just have to relax, and it will just kind of dissipate. You'll just suddenly feel like your body drops downwards as the muscle gives in. You can then add a little bit of movement into that area, okay? And I want to do this a couple of times a day, because initially this can feel really intense. So do the same thing either side. We're now going to get rid of this. We're going to use this for our low back stretch, is what I meant to say. So same area as we did before, we're laying across the foam roller. This time though, we're actually going to lay with our back over the roller, like we're in kind of a barrel position. Now with this one, if you have any spinal intolerance, either flexion or extension, and you feel that this could trigger your back, just leave this one out, just follow along for now. The idea here is that we're going to add a little bit of a rocking into the heels, just to get our body to open up a little bit. Now, again, if you have any compression issues, I would skip this one. We're not trying to cause any issues for you going into the rest of your day, but what this can do is help to stretch your body, and we don't want to create too much mobilization in the low back, that lumbar spine, because that's what can really lead to injury. So stretching up towards the wall, reaching below, we're just turning the hips slightly. We're just trying to get our hips to kind of open up. You can return to that initial position if you want to, that we were in before, but this time it's a little bit higher up. So if we remember our lateral stretch we did earlier, we're going to be a little bit higher up the back this time, into just below the rib cage. This is where we want to target. We're just supporting our weight and we're stretching over. Again, now we've moved the stretch further up. We've actually hit into these intercostals, serratus anterior, and into a little bit of the lats that kind of attach to the arm. So we want to bring our arm backwards and forwards, a little bit of a rotation. We're compressing this side to allow our body to stretch on the opposite side. So if you feel it too much in your rib cage, you may just want to pop onto your elbow and then work out a position where you have like a light pressure, because sometimes this can really push on the ribs. So arms coming over to bring it round and around the other way. And then once you kind of ease up a little bit, stretch out and rotate. And then let's switch sides. So again, aim for this one is, we're into our QL kind of area, this lateral kind of portion of the QL. Again, all of the work we're doing today is to kind of even up both sides of your body so that you get this nice, even lateral movement and you don't feel too uncomfortable. So, resting body across, reaching up slightly, bit of downward pressure. I'm lifting my hip up slightly. Leaning back till I find a little bit of the area that I want to target. So this, in this case, is going to be my QL, which is the big muscle at the back, sorry, at the base of the spine, and a little bit of the side as well. So into this kind of serratus intercostal lat. And I'm stretching my arm away. I appreciate you can't quite see, but you can see my legs this time, which is beneficial. And I am stretching my bottom arm away slightly. Again, foam rollers at the side. And I'm bringing this arm all the way over, and I'm just using that to adjust the position. I can do some rotations either front or back, and I can reach over a little bit more. I can even lose the arm and add some more weight into this area. So those are all options you can work with. Pick one. You can even just hang out, take some breaths, and if you're a little bit more comfortable, you can just drop your body position down. Just a stretch. Awesome. So there's a few lateral stretches for you. I'm going to finish off with a little bit of a neck stretch just to finish the last couple of minutes. And we're going to do a little bit of a shoulder as well. So we've gone from the foot, we've moved up the leg, we moved into the hip a little bit. Now your low back should feel a little bit less compressed. But now we've also done some of the serratus anterior intercostals, the lats. We're moving up a little bit. Now we're into kind of the neck and shoulders. So a couple of reasons you want to move into this area. You want to complete that whole line because we've gone from foot to neck. You're not sure what is causing a restriction, but maybe it's actually restriction around your neck that's pulling your whole fascial net upwards. A bit like a t-shirt, you know, you pull here and it's actually going to pull the back forward. If I'm pulling down here, it's going to pull the top corner down. Imagine that is what's going on with your body. You've got to work out what areas you need to hit the most. So let's do a little bit of a lateral neck stretch. We're going to bring our hand across. We're going to bring our arm behind us, and we're going to roll our shoulder gently back and down. So gently back and down. And I want to give your armpit a big sniff if you took a shower this morning. And if you didn't, this is just a reminder you should. So I'm tractioning my head up slightly. It's coming over, down, and I'm relaxing. I'm going to bring my hand over the top. I'm going to bring my other arm around. I'm tractioning up slightly. Around. So we're trying to create some length upwards and over. We're trying to create that length upwards and over. Tractioning up. A little bit of light pressure at the back here is okay too, but we're not like pushing it straight down. The important thing here is we're lifting up and over. and just shake that head off. You can do that a couple of times just to get that lateral and posterior neck. The next thing you can do is just put light pressure up and over each side, keeping your nose pointed forward. So before we were towards our armpit, now we're facing forward, pulling our arm down slightly. You can even bring it behind if you wish to. You can now start to lower your nose towards your armpit and then up to the top corner. Again, that light traction is really what's going to help here. And then we're going to change sides. So now nose is facing forward. Tractioning up and over. And now just roll your neck out. Roll your shoulders out slightly, pulling them down behind you as you do. And then see how you feel. So we did our feet. We did a little bit of work in between our toes, all the way moving up the body, lateral stretch through into our neck. Hopefully that really helped you to set yourself up for the day. For those of you that have joined me today, thank you very much. I always appreciate your time. Hopefully you found that helpful. For those of you who have joined us for the first time, you're like, what the hell is this guy doing rolling around on the floor? Well, now you know we're working with mobility, so that's thank you for joining us. Back same time next week when we'll be doing Mobility Magic on a Monday at 11:30 for the regulars. You can also check out the replay sessions, so the sessions that we post regularly on Instagram TV. The live sessions get posted. However, any sessions are going to be changed. We do this to keep the programming and content fresh, and there will be more sessions going up as we go through them. So thank you very much for joining me. If you have any questions, insults, anything you'd like to say, please post it in the video that I post afterwards to the live channel, the replay session. If you have anything you'd like us to cover, then let me know. Thanks so much for your time.